I still can't look at GoPro footage without feeling sick. It was late October, just outside of Columbus. My roommate, Tyler, wanted to film a Scare the Trespasser video for his YouTube channel. We found this dilapidated farmhouse that everyone in town thought was abandoned. The plan was simple. Our friend Chris would lure a victim, usually just a friend of a friend who wasn't in on the joke, into the house. I was already inside, waiting in the basement behind a massive pile of old, yellow insulation. I was wearing a high-end silicone mask that looked like a burn victim. The basement was freezing and smelled like wet copper. I sat there for 20 minutes in total silence, checking my watch. Finally, I heard the front door creak open upstairs. I heard footsteps. They weren't the light, fast steps of a teenager. They were heavy, uneven, and slow. I figured Chris was just doing a good job of acting scared to lead the person down. I gripped my GoPro and got into position. The basement door groaned open, and the heavy thud started coming down the wooden stairs. One step, two steps. The figure reached the bottom. I didn't wait. I jumped out from behind the insulation, screaming at the top of my lungs, shoved the camera in their face, and did a mock lunge. I expected a scream. I expected them to trip over themselves, trying to get away. Instead, the person didn't even flinch. I was staring at a middle-aged man in a stained canvas jacket. He was holding a rusted crowbar that was dripping with something dark. He didn't look scared. He just looked at me with these hollow, yellowing eyes. He leaned in close, smelling like old meat, and whispered, "You're not supposed to be in here yet." I felt a surge of adrenaline. I thought he was part of the prank, that Tyler had hired an actor to outscare me. I started laughing, backing away toward the coal chute exit. "Man, you're good," I said, giving him a thumbs up. That was hardcore. He didn't answer. He just watched me crawl out of the small window. I ran to the car, leaning against the door and catching my breath. I waited for Tyler and Chris to come running out after me, laughing about how they got me. I waited for 30 minutes. Then an hour. The house stayed dark. My calls went straight to voicemail. 2 days later, the police tape went up. They found Tyler's phone and Chris's GoPro sitting neatly on the kitchen floor. But the house was completely stripped. No furniture, no insulation, no roommates. The lead detective told me the house had been a known site for human processing by a local syndicate. They didn't just kill people, they disassembled them. I'm the only one who walked out. I have to live with the memory of jumping out and cheering while my best friend were likely being held 3 feet under the floorboards I was standing on. I don't think they've stopped looking for the one that got away. It was 2019 and my girlfriend, Sarah, and I were 19. We lived in a small town near Sleepy Hollow in New York. If you've ever been there, you know that once the sun goes down, the back roads become pitch black and completely empty. There's nothing to do, so we spent most of our time thinking of stupid ways to get views on YouTube. The plan was simple. I bought a cheap mechanic's jumpsuit and doused it in theatrical blood. I was going to lie face down in the middle of a dark stretch of road, looking like a hit-and-run victim. Sarah would hide in the tall grass with her phone to record people's reactions. It was supposed to be a harmless, if tasteless, prank. We got out there around midnight. The air was thick and humid, and the only sound was the cicadas. For the first hour, not a single car passed. We almost gave up, but then, around 2 a.m., I saw the faint glow of headlights in the distance. I signaled to Sarah, laid down on the cold asphalt, and went completely still. A beat-up, tin sedan slowed to a crawl and stopped about 10 feet away. I kept my eyes shut tight, my heart hammering against my ribs. I heard the engine turn off, then the creak of a heavy car door opening. I expected to hear a panicked voice or the sound of someone dialing 911. Instead, there was total silence. After a few seconds, I heard a wet, heavy dragging sound. It sounded like thick plastic being pulled over gravel. I risked a tiny peek through my eyelashes. A man in a stained windbreaker was walking toward me. He wasn't reaching for a phone. He was shaking out a large, industrial-grade plastic tarp. He didn't look scared. He looked busy. He kept glancing toward the tree line, not with concern, but with a practiced, clinical silence, as if he were checking for witnesses. Before I could process what was happening, I felt his hands lock around my ankles. His grip was like iron. He didn't check my pulse. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just started dragging me toward the open trunk of his car. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This man didn't think I was a victim he needed to save. He thought I was a body he could use to cover up something else. He was looking for a disposal site, and I had just made his job easier. I didn't think. I just screamed and kicked as hard as I could. I felt one of my shoes fly off as I scrambled to my feet. The man didn't yell. He didn't even look surprised. He just stood there by his trunk, staring at me with a completely blank expression. I bolted into the woods towards Sarah. We ran through the brush for what felt like miles until we reached my truck, which we'd hidden a half-mile down a side trail. We drove home in total silence, the adrenaline making my hands shake so hard I could barely steer. I never went to the police. I was a dumb kid, and I was terrified of being charged for the stunt or getting in trouble for the fake blood. I tried to convince myself it was just a misunderstanding, but I know what I saw. Now, every time I see a missing persons flyer posted at a gas station in that county, I feel a sick knot in my stomach. I escaped that night, but the man with the tan sedan is still out there, and he's still looking for a body. I was 16 at the time. It was a Tuesday night, and I was just sitting in my room with the lights off, playing Valorant. My parents were already asleep downstairs. The Discord call was pretty normal. There were 4 of us, just talking, joking around, and playing matches. 2 of the guys, Rob and some other kid, started arguing over a $5 wager. It was such a small amount of money. The other kid typed an address into the chat. He told Rob to pull up if he was actually tough. We all knew it was a fake address. It was just a random house in a state halfway across the country. Rob didn't get mad. He got really quiet. That was the first red flag. Usually, Rob yells when he's angry, but this time, he just started sharing his screen. He had a police scanner website open. Then, he pulled up a VoIP app to make a phone call. He told us to stay quiet and listen. He called the local police department for that random address. He sounded so calm. He told the dispatcher that he had just killed his mother and was holding his siblings hostage. He gave him the address the other kid had typed in the chat. We sat there in silence. I thought he was just trying to be edgy. I thought the police would show up, see nothing was wrong, and leave. 5 minutes passed. Then the scanner started blowing up. We heard the units being dispatched. Code 3. High priority. Rob was streaming the audio for us. We heard the sirens through the scanner. Then we heard the officer on the radio. He said a man was stepping out onto the front porch. The man didn't have a weapon. He was just a father who wanted to see why there were blue and red lights in his driveway.
Drop the weapon.
An officer screamed through the radio. The man must have reached for his phone or moved too fast. We heard one single gunshot. The scanner went silent for a second. Then we heard,
Suspect down. Get an ambulance.
Nobody in the Discord call said a word. No one laughed. The kid who gave the fake address instantly left the server. I heard Rob take a deep breath. He didn't say GG. He didn't brag. He just quietly disconnected from the call. The man died right there in front of his own kids. Rob is in prison now. They tracked his IP within 24 hours. But I still have the recording of that call on my hard drive. Sometimes I play it back late at night. It scares me how easy it was. A bored kid in a dark room ended a life with just a few sentences. Now, every time I hear a car door slam outside my house, my heart stops. I stay away from people online. I don't talk in game chats anymore. I realize that it doesn't matter if you're innocent. If the wrong person gets bored, you might never wake up again. My life feels like a countdown to a knock that isn't coming. I lived with my friend Mark in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Seattle. It was a decent place for the price. We spent most nights just playing video games or ordering pizza. Every day felt pretty normal. Around October, things started to feel a little bit off. I would wake up and find my car keys in the kitchen sink or inside the fridge. I thought I was just becoming forgetful because of work stress. Then it got worse. One night, I woke up to the smell of gas. I walked into the kitchen and saw all 4 burners on the stove were turned all the way up. No flame. Just gas filling the room. I asked Mark about it, but he just looked at me like I was crazy. A few nights later, I heard a faint scratching sound coming from the wall behind my headboard. It sounded like fingernails on drywall. I started spiraling into a deep depression. I couldn't sleep. I felt like I was losing my mind. I even started hearing my name being whispered from the darkness of my closet late at night. Last night, Mark came into my room laughing his head off. He looked so proud of himself. He told me the haunting was all a prank. He said he wanted to see how long it would take for me to snap. He told me he was the one moving my keys and scratching the walls. I felt a small wave of relief for a second. But then, I asked him why he would leave the stove on and whisper my name in October. Mark stopped laughing. His face went pale. He looked me dead in the eyes and said he only started his prank last week. He said he hadn't even touched the stove or been near my closet. We both went dead silent. We realized at the same time that for 3 months, someone else had been in the apartment with us. We grabbed our phones and ran out of the building. We didn't even pack our clothes. We called the police from a gas station down the street. The landlord checked the apartment the next morning. He found a nest made of old blankets and food wrappers hidden deep inside the crawlspace vents. Next to the blankets were dozens of Polaroid photos. Every single photo was of me. Some were of me eating dinner. Most of them were close-ups of my face while I was fast asleep. The police never found the man who lived in our walls. I moved to a different state, but I don't feel any safer here. Every time a floorboard creaks in my new house, I wonder if it's just the wood settling or the man who followed me from Seattle. I was a college junior majoring in psychology. For my final project, I wanted to do a social experiment video about human connection. I thought it would be a great way to get an A and maybe a few thousand views on YouTube. The plan was simple. I would stand in the middle of a busy city plaza with a blindfold on. I held a cardboard sign that said trust/free hugs. My friend, Marcus, was hidden about 50 yards away. He had a high-quality camera with a zoom lens. He was supposed to capture the wholesome reactions of strangers. I stood there for about 2 hours. It actually felt really good. I felt dozens of people hug me. I could smell different perfumes and expensive coffees. I heard kids giggling and office workers wishing me a good day. I felt like I was proving that the world was a kind place. Then it happened. A person walked up and wrapped their arms around me. They were slightly shorter than me. At first, it was just a normal hug. But then, they didn't let go. 10 seconds passed. then 30. I started to feel a bit awkward, but I didn't want to be rude. It was a trust experiment after all. They leaned their head onto my shoulder. They started whispering something, but the city traffic was too loud for me to hear. I just figured they were having a bad day and needed the support. They stayed there for 2 full minutes. I felt something wet soaking into the fabric of my shirt on my shoulder. I thought they were crying. I actually patted their back to comfort them. Finally, they pulled away. By the time I reached up and pulled off my blindfold, the person was gone. They had disappeared into the sea of people wearing gray and black coats. I walked over to Marcus. He was standing by his tripod, and his face was completely white. He wasn't moving. "Did you get that?" I asked. "That last one was pretty intense. I think they were crying on me." Marcus didn't say anything. He just rewound the footage and hit play. He zoomed in on the person's hands. They weren't crying. They had been holding a small, medical-grade syringe. While I was hugging them, they had carefully pushed the needle through the back of my shirt and into my shoulder blade. The wetness I felt wasn't tears. It was my own blood leaking out of the puncture. The camera showed them pulling the plunger back, filling the tube with my blood, and then sliding it into their pocket before walking away. They looked right at the hidden camera and smiled. I went to the hospital that night. The doctors put me on a heavy cocktail of antiviral medications immediately. It has been 4 years since that day. I have to get blood tests every few months to see if I've developed anything life-ending. Every time the phone rings, my heart stops. I went out there looking for a moment of human connection. I didn't realize I was actually giving a predator an invitation to take a piece of me home with them. The person was never found, and I spend every night wondering what they did with that vial, and if I am already a dead man walking.